South Point offers all the types of entertainment you'd expect at a first-class Las Vegas resort. Did you know our 400-seat showroom is one of Las Vegas's top destinations for live entertainment? Enjoy live performances by classic Vegas entertainers, bands, and today's hottest comedians, plus a rockin' dance floor. You can also enjoy live entertainment at the Grand View Lounge, where you'll feel all the vibes of old Las Vegas. Enjoy the music, and if you love to laugh, don't miss The Dirty at 12:30, our very own free comedy show, every Friday night at 12:30 a.m. in the Grand View Lounge. The Dirty is 100% free, so arrive early. Go to southpointcasino.com or call the box office at 77136 for today's performances at the showroom and the Grand View Lounge. When you're ready for your favorite cocktail, stop in and unwind at one of our 7 specialty lounges. There's a bar around every corner, because you're in Vegas, baby. South Point Casino has plenty of attractions for the whole family. Catch a movie. Our 16-screen movie theater includes 2 XD Extreme screens for the ultimate in viewing, sound, and luxury. After the show, treat the family to a variety of treats at our old-fashioned ice cream parlor, Kate's Corner. We scoop up a variety of creamy concoctions, including smoothies, hand-dipped cones, milkshakes, malts, sodas, and sundaes. At Kate's, there's something for everyone. And if you've still got time to spare, our bowling center might be right up your alley. Voted Best of Las Vegas, it's a great place for friends and family fun. 64 lanes, a pro shop, snack bar, and arcade. And while the kids are bowling, you can play slots and sip on a drink in the Alley Cat Lounge while overlooking the lanes. For our more serious and professional bowlers, the South Point is also home to a separate tournament bowling plaza.
Afternoon, everyone. Welcome in. It is a Free Throw Friday. Maybe we'll expand even to a Fast Break Free Throw Friday next week. Whoa. Wow.
Take it easy.
I got your attention now, everyone. I'm Jeff Parles. Chris Andrews is here. Vinny Magliulo is here. Because we have multiple shows available to you. Every show we've ever done is available to you on the YouTube page. When we're done, just want to say this. If you missed Eddie Olczyk this morning on the show, watch us first.
Yeah.
Then go to this morning show and watch Eddie O. We talked to him for about 25 minutes. It was great. We also talked to our friend Dwayne Colucci as well. So
that was one of the best shows we ever had.
It was a good one. It was a good one this morning.
Good job, Jeff.
Excellent.
Good job.
Well, I just sat here and asked the right questions, which is important.
Well, Eddie, listen, in our world, Eddie's a huge star.
Oh, yeah.
Hockey and horse racing.
Yep.
You talk about a man after my own heart. Jeez.
You got to love him. And Colucci,
and
Colucci, both too. But Colucci is good with the hockey and the horses as well.
Both.
So,
exactly.
Good job. Well done, team.
So by the way, Jimmy is a game time decision today because Vinny informed me
he's in a conference.
That Jimmy is in a conference right now. Yes.
Right. It's a steamy conference.
Yeah.
Steamy being in quotation marks.
A few paces that way. We'll just go with that. We may see Jimmy. We may not. If we don't, we'll see him next Friday. Hopefully, we'll see him next Friday. But this, of course, basketball show here today, guys. And let's just start. We'll do this at the top of every show. Let's just, since we have it right there, the futures board here at the South Point entering today's action.
Yeah. I did just move a couple of those.
The Auburn Tigers right now, and I know that a few movement, including my alma mater, who is at and we'll go there in a second. But I'll just tell you this: when you have midweek results like we've had this week, and I'm a little bit biased, but talk about my alma mater beating Alabama earlier this week, and what was an insanely good basketball game. By the way, I know you've made the joke of when someone asks you, you can't make that total high enough, and then you come back with the totally insane number.
Right.
That was almost the case where if you said 200, you're almost you were one bucket away from losing there.
Yeah, I know a few people that watched it said it was just a fantastic game. Bama made a run at the end, didn't quite get there. But, Missouri is one team. I lowered. Bama, I raised.
Yep.
And I'm looking at those odds up there. I'm not going to remember all of them, but I did make Bama 12-1.
Oh, okay. Even better price now.
Missouri, where are they at there? 50. I think I just lowered them a notch, either 40 or 45. Cincinnati, which has been an aberration, probably raised. We can get them out of the rotation.
So, but we talked about this a little bit off the air last week.
I got a big bet on them.
You got a gigantic
very
bet.
big bet. Yeah. So I had them running pretty low, but we're kind of getting. I don't want to say evened up because we're still stuck pretty good on them. But I raised them up to 100-1, which is a lot closer where they should be. Trying to think of who else. I think I lowered Wisconsin a little bit. I think I lowered. No, I did not. Michigan State, I kept the same, although they got a big game tonight.
We will get to that.
And they're both playing pretty good basketball right now.
So I want to ask you, Vinny, forgetting the futures here for a second, just your own personal power ratings, because we'll check in every Friday on this. Of course, we know polls don't make prices. Put on the T-shirt.
Thank you.
Again, no problem. I'll give you your $1 for your royalty after the show. But again, we talk about Auburn, we talked about Duke all year long, but right now, I think, especially with Bama's struggles over the last few games, Auburn. Yeah, I know Florida's technically had a Duke in the polls, but Auburn and Duke have pretty much solidified themselves as number 1, number 2 in most power ratings at this point.
There's no question. I have them. I've got Auburn about a point and a half over Duke, and these are just mine. So I mean, others may disagree. Then Duke, and then Houston, who's turned things around again. They're back on another run again. My big question mark for them is the same that I've had for the last couple of years with Houston is the depth and their free throw shooting in critical situations. It's hot and cold. Florida, yeah. I mean, Bama is, and we'll get to Bama. I mean, we talk about a Bama total, right? We're going to have another high total because they're playing Kentucky again, 2 of the highest scoring teams in the country. So they'll square off again tomorrow. But yeah, right. And this is, for me anyway, this is the best Duke team that I've seen in a few years. And even, when a couple of years back or 3 years back, they were touted as that was a terrific Duke squad and it was Duke and everybody else. Well, I think this team is better. Auburn, we talked last week too, Jeff. Remember, Auburn was playing Alabama, and I had them as a slight favorite, and everybody
Marquette
thought
had
I was,
Bama favorite,
and that's fine. Again, it happens sometime, but that was a big statement by Auburn, I think, last week. And you know something, Alabama put so much into that game emotionally, right, as well, and really when you look at it, that. I'm not saying that they suffered from it, but clearly after that this last game, sometimes a game of that magnitude, and again it was 1 and 2. Remember, in terms of again rankings, that was what it was being touted. That is a game that sometimes the mental fatigue and the mental letdown can be more of a factor than a physical letdown. So I think that's what happened to Alabama this week. And I listen, they'll rebound. They'll be fine. They'll still be dangerous. But I also want to touch on the prop that was put up.
Please,
here.
yes.
And Chrissy and I were just talking about it before the show. And then you go back to was when we put this up, Chrissy? The beginning of we put it up last month, right? Yeah, we put it up at the end, right before the title games, I think. So that weekend,
about a month. I think it was
27th of.
I think it was about 3 weeks ago.
That long ago? Okay.
27th
You've told me time moves quick.
It does move quick.
And we made the field versus the SEC $1.60. It got as high as $1.75. Well, it's down to $1.45 now. The field. So initial money came in on the field. And then on the SEC, so good two-way action on the prop, and Chris, and the team, they adjusted, they watched the games, watched the results, take a look at it, and I'll tell you what, it's a good prop, it's a fun prop, and we got a lot of good play on it.
So there was a lot of action on that prop this week, then, because you were 60 and 40 last week, I think, right?
Yeah, we went to a high of 65, then we were down to 60. Yeah. Now we're down to 45. So I'll tell you the truth. I'm looking at Vinny before the show. I said I still think there's some value in betting the SEC.
I agree with you, Chris.
Boy, just looked at now. Listen, is anybody going to be surprised if Duke wins or Houston wins? We can start running the list, But you just look at that look at that board that we have up there. How many teams from the SEC are at the top of the rankings? A whole bunch of them.
Well, it's right now. You have again the AP poll. This is what you see on your screen right now. Entering this week, it was 5 of the top 7 were in the SEC.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Alabama and A&M have both lost this week to other SEC teams that are ranked right now.
Right, yeah.
Mizzou takes Bama out. Mississippi State. I was on Mississippi State. I did not expect them to really put it on A&M like they did on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And then Kentucky and Ole Miss are also ranked. Remember back in the day, guys, I don't want to sound, I don't know why I said it that way, but even at the 64, even with 64, 68, normally the thought was, and conference sizes are different now. It's like, wow, if you got 8 bids in the tournament, oh my goodness, what a year for the conference. And this is mid 2000s, even sometimes in the 2010s.
Yeah.
Now
Jeff,
it's like, SEC is going to start at 11 here.
We talked about it earlier, Jeff. I'm not sure if we talked about it on the air or off the air, but somebody's coming out of nowhere.
Oh, of course. Every year it does.
Could it be Mississippi? I don't know, or A&M or Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. And again, there's teams that are battle tested because you're not going to have too many off nights in the SEC. So could any one of those teams make a serious run? Well, I'd say hell yeah, they can. Yeah, absolutely.
Right now, Lenardi put out a new bracket this morning where somehow North Carolina is team 72. Ryan, somehow. It's almost there. Yeah. He had 12 SEC teams, which is down. Right now, he has Vanderbilt and Arkansas going to Dayton right now.
Wow, really?
And
okay.
Oklahoma and Georgia on the outside looking in. Boy, this bubble is, we say this every year, the bubble is weak, but same old.
But to Chris's point, Jeff, and what you're talking about there is, Chris is talking about somebody coming out of nowhere. Listen, let's look at Arkansas, right? Desperate teams are dangerous teams. And, they started off conference play, I want to say it was like 0-5 or 0-6. They were atrocious. Now, they've won several games. They need a signature win, and they've got a game, and I know we're going to talk about their game. They've got a game this week that is their home. It's winnable. It's against your alma mater.
Yeah.
It's a tough spot. And they're going to be home dogs in this game, Razorbacks. And I'll tell you, this is a spot too where watch all the factors, but pay attention to obviously the quality of teams. But this is the time of year where, again, desperate teams and those bubble teams can definitely be dangerous.
You mentioned it with the desperation factor, and again, there are bubble teams galore, and I mean, go all the way down to Team 76, which by the way, Lenardi has hit as Team 76 right now.
Where they've fallen off pretty much.
Honestly, what a big time disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, a month ago, I don't know. I mean, they probably were, I don't know, 8 or 10 seed, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana's Team 74 right now, and they can't wait for Mike Woodson to be out of there at this point. But no, look, and I will say this for college basketball as a whole, and again, once the tournament comes around, there'll be all the to win the regional bets will be available.
Conference to win, right?
We'll probably have that.
All those conference tournaments as well, the conference tournament prices.
Those are always a little disappointing. Every year, I think it's great basketball. It's not great betting, I think, because the numbers are too good.
Hey, well, okay, you just made the point there, because for some people like that conference championship week better than
it's week
one, because legitimately it's just it's a playoff game every single time.
Great basketball. Yeah.
Now, granted, of course, the best party for the NCAA tournament is just upstairs here at the South Point.
Yeah,
as we know.
Yeah, that we know.
We know. You'll see. Well, I already know. Once I'm done with work, both Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or all 3 days, I'll be upstairs. And also, Vinny and Chris will make appearances upstairs too. I know we will, because we got to get the meatball sub, right? or the pulled pork. One of
I'm
the two.
more the pulled pork
Both
guy.
good.
But,
Well,
the
listen.
meatball sub is not so bad either.
We could do one for breakfast and one for lunch.
Hey, I've done that.
Have multiple meals.
Hey,
up
look,
there.
I've done that before. I've done that
just
before.
saying.
Really? What a surprise.
Hey, look, I've done that before, to say the very least.
Somebody back there like that.
Right. Ryan loved it. But for this bracket going in, of course, like the one good thing with NIL, because we've had this NIL discussion in football a ton. We brought it up probably once every 3 weeks when we did Football Frenzy. NIL has worked in such a good way in basketball, where there's just there's less slots in the NBA period because there's less players. Obviously, you have guys sticking around now longer. You've impact team to team. Look at Kansas right now. Kansas is an absolute mess because they didn't hit in the portal. There are other teams who have hit in the portal and have had great years, but the NIL is going to lead to years of high-end tournaments that are higher end than what they've been over the last few years, which can only help the betting action.
Well, I hope you're right. And I've always said, like, some of those mid-major tournaments, I liked better because you had guards who were there for the fourth year, and really understood the game, understood what their coach wanted. And, I like that. And, if there's something like that can, bring back, obviously I'm a lot older than you. Vinny and I are about the same age. But I remember, Vinny, when we were kids, you knew who was coming back for UCLA.
Absolutely.
It was going to be, Lou Alcindor and Mike Warren and
who could not play as freshman, by the way.
I couldn't play as freshman.
Yeah.
Lynn Shackelford.
Right.
Oh, and who was coming back for Houston? Okay, Elvin Hayes.
Yeah.
Kenny Spain, if you remember him.
Yeah.
So these kind of things, you got to know these players. Now, the one thing I don't like about the NIL, and this happened at Miami earlier this year, is, some of these kids jump ship when they get a better offer somewhere else. And I think that has to be rectified in some way. Listen, if it's going to be a quasi-pro league, then they should probably sign some sort of contracts, or there should be some sort of obligation. So I think that will be rectified over the course of time. But to your point, Jeff, if we can get some of these kids to stay around, I think it makes the game better. And you know what? I think it'll make the game better in the NBA too, because you get these guys who are a little more seasoned. Look, who was the last player that played his entire college career and wound up being a star? I would say it's probably Tim Duncan, who stayed all 4 years.
Duncan was 3, right?
Pardon me?
I think Duncan was 3.
It may be.
Right?
He came out early. He declared early.
He had a pretty darn good college career.
He only played at Wake Forest, though.
Yeah, but he only played at Wake, came out, and was one of the great power forwards of all time. So I hope we see a little more of that, where maybe they're better prepared for the pro game once they get to the pros.
I think what we're going to see with and of course the NIL is just by virtue of the fact that there's more than twice the teams, right, in college, in Division I college basketball. What's happening with the NIL, and we saw it in football, is that some of the non-power conferences, and remember, like in football, we know there's Power 4 now, but in basketball, there's still a Power 5 because you have to include the Big East. So previously, I always said there were Power 6 in basketball, but some of the conferences outside of that, let's say the MAC, well, what those players are trying to do is get into the Power 5s too. So it's almost like the Power 5 conferences in basketball are feeding off of not only each other, right? There's enough movement there, okay? But you have a situation now where a non-Power 5 conference is getting siphoned, has players siphoned to these super conferences, the bigger conferences. So I think we're going to continue to see this until, and it's not going to be the NCAA, I don't think, because the NCAA, they're just looking to justify their existence, and God knows what. Look at that. They're the reason that there is NIL now and the transfer portal and everything. So how is it going to change and when? I'm not sure. Will the conferences get together and try to decide it? Probably not, because as long as the Power Five conferences are strong and remain strong, why would they want to do anything else? So I don't know how much of a change there's going to be. I think we're going to continue to see movement. I just don't know what it's going to take to lessen it or stabilize it, if you will.
Take a few years. It's probably going to take a few more years.
And the players will get paid.
Well,
and
the players are getting
them.
paid right now. So, I mean,
I don't begrudge them getting paid.
Yeah.
Not at all. I just would like to see a little more stability as far as, just jumping ship one year to the next, to the next, to the next. I don't really like it. And I'm speaking more as a fan.
No, absolutely.
Like I said, I'm going back to the days when you and I, we knew who was coming back for North Carolina. We knew who was coming back for Michigan State. We
your
knew
local
that
team,
every year.
For Pitt, right? For St. John's, and you're like, you knew who was a fresh. Oh, we had, Chris Mullen's going to be around for another 2 years, right?
That was great.
Right? So
good for the sport.
It's stability. But the other part, look, we're getting into a lot here, but the ripple effect now. Think about it. It's happening in the NBA. I don't like it here anymore. I'm quitting on my team, and look what's going on with Butler and now going to the Warriors, right? Let's call it what it is. I mean, so the other part of it is, look, from a real world situation. What are they teaching? You know what? There's going to be some adversity. Get better. And you go to the highest bidder. Okay, as long as there are bidders and they're going to be higher bidders, this is going to exist for the foreseeable future.
Let's get into some games for today. Let's start in the Philadelphia area, Villanova and Marquette. We picked the two biggest games of the day. If there's a game you want to hear about that's going today, comment along in the chat. We'll make sure to get it before we end the show here today. We're also going to be looking at the big games over the weekend, as we always will, even though sight unseen on some lines. There are very few lines out right now for
they usually
tomorrow.
Start coming out about 4 or 5.
Last week we hit it right on the head at the end, where a lot of them started populating at about 250 a week ago, or 350, I should say. All right, Marquette Nova. So Marquette, well in hand, NCAA tournament team yet again. Villanova, after their big win over St. John's, has dumped 2 in a row, including having a really good shot at Connecticut last week and blowing a big lead in that game. 1.5 Vincennes right now on this one. The total, actually, see, we bring in the action as it happens. Total just got bet down as we were on the air, down to 141.5. Yep.
Okay.
Down a half a point, which is now the low that it has been this whole time. Right now, the peak of the market on the total is 142, and the peak of the market on Marquette is 2. So you guys right in line with the bulk of the market right now, with the Golden Eagles 1.5 and 141.5.
Did bet it over initially this morning, and they did take 2 with the home with the home team. But look, Marquette 8 straight wins and covers in this matchup. So I talked earlier about an emotional high and an emotional low. Villanova won that game against St. John's. It woke up St. John's, and they had a letdown. Right, they went to their next game was at Providence, and Providence lay in wait. So, but Marquette also, right, when you think about it, they had that tough loss to the Johnnies, and they've had to really. Because it was between, those are the 3 teams, right? When you look at it, it's St. John's, Marquette, and Connecticut, right? In the Big East, when it comes to, who the top. I would say those are the top 3 power-rated teams, and of course, I think the standings reflect that as well, right, Jeff? So, but yeah, I mean, life is tough on the road. And by the way, we've talked about this a little bit too. Traveling. At this time of year, when you look at weather, you have to take a little bit of that into account, at least consider it. And you say, Vin, what are you talking about? They play inside. Sometimes it's difficult to get to certain destinations if flights and drives or in some cases both occur, and it could take a lot out of a team as well, out of the visitors. So just bear that in mind.
I have nothing really to say here. I've liked the opening total. I thought was okay, but they bet it down. But I could see where they'd bet it down. I mean, this is going to probably be an intense game, and a little shot selection may be a little more selective, I guess, and makes sense that maybe under is the right play.
I don't think this Marquette team is quite as good as a lot of people think. They had the good stretch of covering early.
They were better earlier, yes.
I just think Shaka has honestly made his, and he's a good coach, but he really has gotten, I think, elevated at times because of what happened in 2011. I think
fair enough.
2011 was 14 years ago now.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a long time ago.
He went to Texas. They were looking for, automatic national championships.
Right. And look, he's done a nice job at Marquette. Absolutely. Marquette is a solid job, as we know. These
What year was that? 2011?
2011 was VCU to the Final Four.
Didn't I say goes fast?
Yeah, that was my senior year in high school. So that was
high school?
Yeah, senior year of high school. McCormick was only 3, right? No. Yeah, see, there we go.
Take it easy. Take it easy and speak up. I want to hear you.
I was just getting Social Security about that time.
Jimmy was still at the spa.
Jimmy.
Yeah.
Now listen, even with time, there are consistencies that remain.
Are some. Yeah.
Let's go to the biggest game of the night, and some would argue this is the biggest game of the weekend because the first place in the Big Ten is on the line here tonight. The first of 2 meetings over the next 3 weeks between the Michiganders, Michigan State, Michigan, big time game in Ann Arbor tonight. Credit to Izzo. I did not think this team going into the year was more than a 7 seed, an 8 seed, maybe. They are a top 4 seed for a top 16 seed in the NCAA tournament. They, right now, with a win, would be, again, the winner of this game tonight is solo leader in the Big Ten standings. Michigan State's played one more game than Dusty May's Michigan team. But, Chris, this has been an interestingly bet game so far today because 3 was where you guys stood at the beginning. They bet it up. They've taken it back.
I was going to say we're at 3 now.
Yep,
yeah.
They've taken it back to the 3, and we're at 150 right now in this total.
It's like one of our NFL games, Chrissy. It's a toddler on the key number.
On 3, yeah. I don't know. I kind of like the dog a little bit in this game, although I think Michigan has certainly played some pretty good basketball lately. But, what somebody called Izzo Mr. March. Well, we're not to March yet, but this is kind of like the same principle. But they've run off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 wins in a row.
Yep,
Michigan State. So I mean, I don't know. This should be a really good game. But I think I'd probably take the points. Just look maybe for a buzzer beater one way or the other.
Vinny, I want to ask you real quick, actually, because with Michigan, because obviously, look, we know the whole aura with Izzo and all this. This is a program that was in relative shambles, all things considered. With having to look, Juwan Howard was in was a 1 seed, was in the Final Four. Like it was out. That quick. It was quick, very quick on the fall part of Michigan. Dusty May comes in from FAU. Indiana fans are still pissed that they kept Woodson and didn't bring him home. May was there when Bobby Knight was still coaching at IU.
And he's got the scars to prove it.
And this Michigan team and this Michigan team plays such a unique way, Vinny, that we don't see in modern basketball. They want to beat you with both big guys on the court. Golden, the FAU transfer, Wolf, the Yale transfer, and they've both been phenomenal this year, and that goes with a high-end backcourt as well for Michigan.
Very rugged up front, a little more old school, right, than we're used to seeing. And, these two, and now Wisconsin,
Yep.
The class, right? Wisconsin, I think, is playing better
I
than
have Wisconsin rated number 1 in that conference right now.
I was just going to say, look at that board. That might be a sleeper at 40-1.
And we're going to talk about that game, I think, coming up.
We will, yes.
So you got those 3 teams. And, Illinois, I don't know, hot and cold. But getting back to this is a terrific matchup. I do like the way this Michigan team plays, hard-nosed as well. It's a little interesting, too, and we're going to see this throughout, that these are predominant conference games, but here we are. It's the stretch run of the season. A lot of these teams have not played each other yet, which is interesting. It's kind of like the NFL where, look at the Steelers. I don't have to remind you, Chris. Yeah. They didn't play. Look who they played in the last month of the season.
The division game.
So I think, I'm a little curious about that. And so, these 2 teams there's going to be a lot of quick turnarounds coming up. But yeah, I could see this number. It's not a high number. I could see where folks see value with 3.5, and I could see where folks like the home squad laying the 3. So good game. It's definitely the game of the night for sure. Watch it.
Their argument that this is the game of the weekend, but a few SEC games will have something to say about that, and one giant one in the Big 12 as well.
Yeah.
But this is, look, first place on the line. Entering tonight in the Big 10, Michigan is 12-2. Spartans are 12-3. So game in hand for the Wolverines.
And then, what's Wisconsin?
Wisconsin 11-4 in conference. Okay. Ryan McCormick's got those standings right here for us. Wisconsin right now 4. One quick note, as you see these bloated conferences now, 15 make it to Indianapolis. The bottom 3, Northwestern, by the way, got a huge win last night, upsetting Ohio State. So right now, Northwestern, Washington, and Penn State would not even make it to Indianapolis.
Penn State started out pretty good, too.
Well, they won this week also, but still in trouble now.
Just to, even though and we talked at length about the NIL situation and transfer portal, this is still a big recruiting game. Let's face it, right? Because you're going to start, a lot of your recruiting is going to be, you want that support in the state, right? You want that home that home support. So there's that element that still does exist, even with the transfer portal and everything that goes with it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here, Ryan. When we get back, we'll go to the big games on Saturday, and we're going to be starting up with a top 10 AP poll matchup in College Station right out of the gate.
Oh, okay.
Right out of the gate, Tennessee and A&M. When we get back right here, Sports by the Book on a Free Throw Friday.
We have 11 amazing restaurants featuring a wide variety for every price range and appetite. South Point's Garden Buffet has something for everyone at unbeatable prices. Or, if hunger strikes in the middle of the night, join us at Coronado Cafe. The American menu offers breakfast, lunch, or dinner 24 hours a day, plus a Chinese kitchen for authentic Chinese dishes from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. From steak and eggs to wonton soup, it's fast and friendly service 24/7. When you need a quick pick-me-up, you can find it at our state-of-the-art Starbucks just inside the main South Point entrance. Order ahead with the Starbucks app for easy mobile order pickups. Or enjoy your favorites in the relaxing dining area anytime, day or night. If you love Mexican food, Baja Miguel's has all of your south of the border favorites. There are dozens of classics to choose from, like fajitas, ceviche, chimichangas, tacos, and more. And for spirit lovers, Baja's colorful non-smoking tequila bar is right outside. Or maybe you're in the mood for seafood. Big Sur Oyster Bar has fresh seafood prepared right before your eyes. Savor freshly shucked oysters, crab legs jambalaya, shrimp and lobster. Beers on tap and a selection of fine wines are perfect to pair with your seafood favorite. Whether lunch or dinner, you'll love this fun atmosphere, located just off the casino floor. Ready to shake things up? Step back in time and treat yourself to one of the oldest restaurant chains in the country. Steak and Shake, famous for original mouth-watering steak burgers and hand-dipped milkshakes in a variety of flavors. For some old-fashioned fun, try Steak and Shake.
Welcome back in Free Throw Friday here at the South Point, right here in the South Point studio. Sportsbook behind us. I'm Jeff Parles. Chris Andrews is here. Vinny Magliulo is here. Two Hall of Famers. A lot of years of experience here. Hey, what is it with the three of you guys again? Are we over 150 for you two and
I
Jimmy?
don't think we're quite there.
About
146, right?
Right, yeah.
For me, 179. So what's that?
46.
46 years.
47 for me. So there you go.
Yeah, right in that pocket.
93, and then Jimmy's
Jimmy.
50.
Yeah, right in that
About
pocket.
50 for Jimmy.
Yeah, over 140.
Close enough.
Close enough.
I think anybody's going to match it. I can tell you that.
No, I agree with that, Chris. That's for certain. All right, let's get into tomorrow. Let's start Texas A&M and Tennessee in the SEC. Again, you just get these sort of matchups the rest of the way, every single day in the SEC because
Good stuff.
Just how good this league is. Let's just start here, Vinny. What number would you make this game? I only see one book that has this number up, and it is DraftKings. So that is the only number currently in the field right now.
Well, they probably have A&M as a home favorite.
They do not.
Well, I make Tennessee 3.
They have Tennessee 1.5.
Okay.
I'm looking at Ken Palm.
So
They have A&M 1.
So,
Interesting.
I think you might see a flip of favorites
Oh,
here.
I'm
off
sorry.
the upper-
I'm sorry. They have Tennessee,
Tennessee
1.
one.
Sorry.
Got it,
They have Tennessee
So
1.
that'll be a flip of favorite. But I make Tennessee 3. I mean, now that said, the matchup this matchup favors the home team in recent years. So my number's probably high and should be adjusted down
What
a
do you
little
have?
bit.
3?
It comes to 3, but
Yeah.
people thought I was crazy last week when I made
you're all over it.
Auburn 3, 2.5 or 3 at Alabama. So, but look, it's probably going to come less than that. Physical team, by the way. Pay attention. This A&M team. Now they laid an egg this week, but credit this team rebounds. This is their bread and butter is second chance points.
Oh, Vinny, we went over this last week. Yeah.
They are physical and they pound the glass. So
They had a bad offensive rebounding game against Ole Miss, and they're still at 42% of their misses rebounded. Still good for number one in the country. All I'll tell you is if you like rollerball, you're going to love this game.
good defense, Tennessee. That's their bread
Pretty
and
low
butter.
total.
Is
Again, we're going
Tennessee.
by Ken Palm.
Yeah, so
What do
I
they got there?
I see 130.5. Ken Palm's got 127.
127. Yeah.
I'll just say this. If the refs don't lose their minds, which is always in play in college basketball,
No.
this is a dead under game, assuming that there are not excess and fouls, which could happen because they're two physical teams, get the wrong officiating crew. This game could very easily have 55 free throws, and it is very hard to stay under a total in the 130s if you get that many free throws. So that's one of those where officiating will matter. I think A&M wins the game. I do.
Do you really?
I do. Tennessee's offense scares me.
It
disappears for too long a periods.
They live and die with their defense, Jeff.
Yeah,
That's it.
If I will say though, if this game's played in the 1-teens, that's a good sign for Tennessee. If this is played in the 1-teens, if this game is an over game, that's favor the home team with that one. If we get that, we mentioned Wisconsin earlier, guys.
Yeah.
I'm stunned at how good this Wisconsin team is. Stunned.
Kind of come out of nowhere, really.
Yeah, Ken Palm's got him at 7 in the country, and honestly, I can't really quibble with it.
I probably need to take a look at them because I'm not sure if I made a bunch of adjustments a couple hours ago, and I'm not sure if I might have adjusted whiskey down a little bit.
They are so good on offense. They are so efficient on offense, and they can shoot the ball. And also, too, as a team that will probably play close games in the tournament, when you shoot 84% from the free throw line, that's pretty good.
Yes, it is.
That's pretty good to have that on your side in close games also.
Pay attention to free throw shooting and rebounding. 2 key factors. And those are teams that are at least going to keep you in games and teams that can move forward in the tournament.
So they're playing the Ducks Oregon, who's been
Conference game.
yes, as we know, Big Ten game. Hey, Oregon already struggled in Madison once this year in football, even though they won that game. But so Vinny, Chris, early numbers I see are 8.5 on this game with a 153.5.
I make it
Paul
higher.
has it 9.
Yeah, you like it higher,
10.
Vinny?
10.
10? Yeah, I'll just say this with Wisconsin, and this is a team historically, except for last year where they finally got them in round one. They are always a thorn in my side betting in March. Always.
Okay.
Always. I don't know why. It just happens to fall that way. This is the best team that Wisconsin has had since that team that made the national title game that ended up losing to Duke, of course, spoiled the Kentucky team, which
That was an undefeated Kentucky team they beat.
that Kentucky team is these. I can't. You know what?
What year was that? Who
That
with
was
Kentucky?
15. That was 15. That was Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker and that wasn't Bledsoe. That was too late for
Who
Bledsoe.
was the coach? Bo Ryan, the coach?
Bo Ryan was still at Wisconsin. Yes.
That Kentucky team who lost that game. That was their first loss of the
Only
season.
loss.
It reminded me a lot of the UNLV team in '91 that lost in the semifinals to Duke.
Yeah.
I mean, that and the UNLV team are
Right.
arguably two of the three best teams never to win the title.
Exactly right. Yeah.
That Kentucky team was. I mean, Devin Booker came off the bench. I mean,
Yeah.
just how ridiculous that team was. But I will say, if this is an in-game game, this Wisconsin-Oregon game, just because I want to see if Oregon's able to score. If Oregon's able to score, this game's going over.
Well, can they score consistently throughout the game? Who's going to be? Who's going to score? Who contend or is projected to score more consistently during the course of the game? It's obviously Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah.
So, but to your point, Jeff, about watching the end game, sure, keep an eye on it.
Let's go to the Big 12 next. We got a few games in the Big 12 we can hit here. And we start with Texas Tech and West Virginia here. Texas Tech, boy, one of those where you like the opening number. It goes, people bet it the way that you thought it would get bet, and then like, oh, I'm not going to take 3 points less than I could have got last night. I didn't need them. TCU won that game outright earlier in the week against Texas Tech. And what was really a strange outing from a very good Red Raider team.
Yeah.
Now they get West Virginia, and boy, if you had the Mountaineers minus 3.5 2 nights ago, take a lap. That was brutal. Up 9 with 17 seconds, laying 3.5,
right?
and they win by 3.
Two shots from the bleachers.
Well, not only that, Vinny, I had under in that game. Cincinnati had a wide open look from 3 to tie the game. Thankfully, for my sake, they missed it because the game goes to overtime. 120, I think at 128. See you later. But Vinny, Texas Tech is really good, and this kind of feels like a good spot to get themselves right against a West Virginia offense that has had its struggles so far this year.
The thing about this game is Texas Tech. They respond off of what happened the other night? I think they were. I don't want to say looking ahead to this, but I think the lesson from that game is you've got to. Again, it sounds cliche from a coaching standpoint. You have to bring your A game every night, especially in conference play. They did not do that. And again, credit TCU for what they did in that game. But I think Texas Tech. I think they were guilty of reading some of their own headlines. And I think they paid for it the other night. I think they rebound here.
11.5, the early number.
I make the game 13. But
Yeah, I think 12 was what 11 or 12. I clicked off it. TCU. I mean, since Jamie Dixon's gone there, I've kind of expected better things.
I agree with you, Chris.
But they do come up with some surprises every now and then. Dixon is a good coach. What's happened at TCU, I honestly don't know. But seeing all those years at Pitt, he had tremendous success there. Went home. I guess he was the point guard at TCU a long time ago, and I expected better things out of him. But again, it's not been a great run for him at TCU, but they do have some surprises, and including the Texas Tech game the other day.
Pitt's never recovered from Dixon leaving. Let's be real.
They haven't.
They really haven't. One step away from the Final Four. If it wasn't for Scotty Reynolds in 2009.
Well, I mean, almost, I don't say almost every year, but a whole bunch of years, they were a 1 or a 2 seed.
Well, they were 2009. They were the 1, lose that one. The year that Butler made the Final Four. I think the second go around, that was that ridiculous game where Gary McGee fouled Matt Howard 91 feet from the hoop.
God. Yeah, right.
In that one where, honestly, the winner of that game was making the national championship game, and it happened that way with Butler getting back. But, hey, look, never the same, that Pitt program. I know Kevin Stallings had a fun time there, but that's a different discussion for a different time.
That's what they've never recovered from.
That's correct.
Kevin Stallings. But, Dixon, I was surprised when he moved on, of course, but he was going what he considered home. And if you have the ability to do that for a lot of folks, that's good, but hasn't worked out the way he thought it would.
Let's go to Mississippi State and Oklahoma here real quick. Big win for the Bulldogs earlier in the week. We discussed it. They beat A&M. The non-betting community said it was an upset. It was not. Mississippi State was favored in the game, covered the game easily. Now they get a bubbly Oklahoma team, totally on the bubble, the Sooners. Going in SEC play, I thought the Sooners were a little bit of a paper tiger to begin with anyway. I thought they played over their heads in non-con. They had the big tournament where they won in the Bahamas. They beat Arizona. They beat Louisville. They beat Michigan on neutral. But they've really come back there. Oklahoma's 3-10 in SEC play.
Yeah, look at it. Yeah, they've lost 5 in a row. But, the only game they probably should have won was LSU.
Yes, and their best win in conference is at Arkansas. So they're, again, look at that. A team that is, Lenardi's 69th team is 15th in the SEC this year. Yeah. But this is a weird spot, though, Vinny, for Mississippi State going on the road after getting a sizable home win. And that also, too, they beat Ole Miss last week as well. So back-to-back sizable wins for the Bulldogs here. 1.5 is the number I'm seeing with Mississippi State favored here.
Good team, solid team. Not a team that not a lot of folks are talking about because a lot of other SEC teams get all the publicity. And I think it's just fine with them because they play good discipline. It's another physical team. And they're going to be road favorites here against the Sooners. Yeah, I've got them 2.5. So, again, I'm not saying that they're going to win the game, but they're certainly the better team. You hit it on the head, Jeff. I mean, Oklahoma started this. I think they were 10-0 at one point, and now they came back. But there were some good wins that you mentioned as well. But that's where teams still trying to find themselves, and this is when you want to find out who you're going to see some teams now that are right around 500. Some teams that might even be under 500. Somebody's going to be under 500 to win a conference tournament, playing great basketball, and we're going to wind up in the NCAA tournament. You're going to be like, oh, how did they get in the tournament? Look, this is the time of year where you need to be playing your best ball.
I just want to say, this is one man's humble opinion. Unless they make a big run in the tournament, Oklahoma is the kind of team that should never be in the tournament. If you can't finish at least 500 in your conference, and I know this conference is loaded, blah, blah, blah. I understand all that. But I'd rather have somebody, maybe a conference regular season winner who gets KO'd in the tournament. I'd rather have them in. Oklahoma, they've had their chances. Now, like I said, if they have a great run in the tournament, I'm willing to take another look at that.
Well, they play 5 straight NCAA tournament teams to end the regular season, too.
I know, but that
then they're going to play their conference
tournament,
right? Then they play their conference tournament.
So they've had their chance.
Yeah, I'm of the camp of if in these bloated leagues, if you have 8-10 with a high-end non-con, which Oklahoma, they have the non-con wins, you at least can be in discussion. I prefer to see the.
But that's why they're on the bubble.
I prefer to see the Drakes of the world get in if they happen to lose.
But if Drake gets bounced early, they've had a great 23 wins right now. They're a good, solid team, well coached.
Yeah.
All right. If they get bounced and Oklahoma gets in with the record they have in conference play, to Chris's point, hey, you got to. But that's why also, guys, we're probably going to see
more teams,
the field expand, right? So
let's go to the Big 12, and this is a gigantic one. In Houston, the Cougars will welcome Iowa State to Fertitta Center. I'm very curious to see where your numbers are, Vinny, because this is actually one that has moved off the opener at the one shop that's got it up. Houston they are amazingly coached. They are so tough. They play great defense. long term, my only concern with Houston is the same concern I've had the entire era under Kelvin Sampson. Do they have the score that when they get into that, and it basically every time they've lost the NCAA tournament, this has happened. They get in the game, they have a 5-minute scoring drought.
Isn't that what happened last year?
It feels like it happens every year to them. But it just, they don't have the guy who can get them out of it in an NCAA tournament type of setting. Now, regular season-wise, they're a bear to play against, as they always are. And they welcome an Iowa State team that kind of lost their mojo after Caleb Love threw in that 65-footer against them.
Yeah.
They lost 3 in a row. They got smacked at home by K-State. They lost to Kansas in the last competent game Kansas has played. But since then, now lower-level opponents, Iowa State has won 4 in a row, and now get a crack at the big dog here in the conference, Chris.
Again, I haven't been making numbers. I'm really just going off Ken Palm at this point in time. Has him a 9-point dog.
I make the game 10.
You make it 10, yeah. I mean,
it looks ridiculous. I mean, I had
It's 9.5, by the way.
I had to check my double check my math because it just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, they did have that trough where they lost the 3 in a row. Like you said, the teams that were good but not probably had no business losing to them. I don't know. I mean, where's Houston play?
What, at home?
At the Fertitta
At Fertitta,
Center?
yeah. Fertitta,
That's why I don't like Houston. So I'll be rooting for Iowa State.
Iowa State, sometimes I think they're their own worst enemy. It's great to be confident. Sometimes they get a little cocky, and it costs them, and they have to make runs in game. There are games that they have to come back from and win, and but also like you mentioned the Caleb Love game where they came back, they took the lead, they give up a half court, it was a tremendous shot, half court shot, but they asked for that too because here's the two things that happened.
Didn't guard the inbounder.
Well, didn't guard the inbounder, and then when he did get the ball, you foul him. Right? Don't you can't let him get the shot off. I don't care where I don't care if he's in at the end line, right? You think about it. So and by the way, and then they lost that game in overtime. They had a lead in overtime as well. So I mean, Houston, this is they won this matchup, by the way, a year ago here at the Fertitta Center by 8-10 points. So that's probably looks a similar number. But Iowa State's capable of winning this game. I think they're a very dangerous team, but sometimes I think they get a little full of themselves. I think that could be a work against them.
The one concern I have with Iowa State long term, because a non-con looked like their offense had been figured out. Remember last year they were the best defensive team in the country, and then they just same sort of thing that happened to Houston last year. They get into the Sweet 16 against Illinois and they can't score. Their offense has not been the same since getting out of non-con, and they were great in non-con. And it wasn't that they weren't playing high-level teams. They had, other than Duke, they probably should have been they should have beat Auburn in Maui. They were up 17 in that game.
That's true.
Against Auburn, and Auburn came all the way back and stunned them. So I don't know.
You can't blow 17-point leads.
No, you cannot. By the way, 2 people in our chat, Ruben and Peter, leaning to taking the points with Iowa State, especially if they can get double figures in this one. All right, Vandy and Ole Miss here. A quick hitter on this one. Vandy's on the bubble. Ole Miss is ranked. Vinny, I'm seeing Ole Miss as a 1.5-point favorite right now in this one, and that place is so weird to play at Memorial Gymnasium that I would lean the Vanderbilt here if I'm getting the plus price on them in this one.
Yeah, I think it's a bucket. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit higher, but Vandy very tough at home. One of the really much better at home than on the road, no question.
Let's keep it moving here. Number 1 team in the country, Auburn hosting Georgia. Georgia's on the bubble. I feel like I'm saying about this more than half of the opponents here
for the next month, buddy. The next 3 weeks.
Auburn, as we talked about, again, them and Duke have really separated themselves from everyone else in the way of power ratings. 17.5 is the number that I see on this one, and
it's going to go up.
To be honest with you, I don't think it's high enough. I really don't. That's crazy.
At 17.
Yeah, that's.
I make it 20.
I'm with Vinny. I like Vinny. I like your number better.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, look, the Tigers escaped Athens, didn't they? Or earlier this year.
Yes,
I think
they did.
They won that game by, 2? It was a close game.
First matchup between Auburn and Georgia this year was 70-68.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So this, if they play their game, certainly they can literally dictate the score.
Now here's one that's another big line, and I'm just gonna ask. I'll just say this. I don't know. Maybe it's time to finally do it. Kansas is hosting Oklahoma State. Vinny, what's your number on that game right now with the way that Kansas has played over the last month?
Still high.
How high?
19.
Oh, wow. 16.5 is the number in the market right now. I'm not touching this game because Oklahoma State is just, to me, I have them power rated number that 15-16 in the Big 12. Only Colorado is worse power ratings wise. I know that's not what the standings say, but I still think Arizona State and Central Florida are better basketball teams than Oklahoma State. But boy, you gotta have quite the stomach to lay almost 17 on the road, even at home, with the way Kansas has played over the last few weeks.
Very sporadic. I'm looking at Kansas's schedule: win one, lose one; win one, lose one; win one, lose, and lose 2 of the last 2. And I mean, BYU absolutely obliterated them. Money showed on Kansas that day too, by the way. I remember that.
Interesting.
Yeah, it did. The wise guys were on Kansas. It's almost, sometimes I look at like a horse race. Beaten favorite, you come back and bet that favorite again the next time. Is that the case with Kansas? I don't know. Maybe. But there's a place for them to get.
They've owned this head-to-head too, and covered. I think they're covered like 80% against this team. So, and they win pretty handily. But
you want something fun with Kansas from earlier in the week? It wasn't so much fun for them, but our friends from OptiStats put this out after the blowout was complete. Yeah. Kansas, for the first time, lost by 30 or more points to an unranked AP team. And that's the first time that's happened in Kansas history since the AP poll started in 1948.
Fog Allen was still there.
They were the last D1 team that had never lost by 30 or more points to an unranked team in the poll era.
Right? Wow.
That's a heck of a stat.
Yeah, OptiStats is always on it, but that one was an eye popper right there, to say the very least.
Yeah.
All right, to the ACC on this one, Clemson, SMU. Vinny, SMU is a bubble team. Clemson is relatively safe. They have the big win over Duke. They're the only one in the ACC to beat Duke so far this year.
First team to beat Kentucky this year.
And Brad Brunell's created a very consistent program.
Good program.
There you go. Clemson third in the conference right now. SMU fifth. SMU and Wake and North Carolina somehow all trying to fight for that for an NCAA tournament.
What is it with SMU? Right? They were surprised in football, and then this is a surprise. I think.
Oh, Andy Enfield.
Yeah. They're ahead of North Carolina. I mean, think about that, right? They went ahead of Pitt. I mean, look at the schools that they vaulted. I mean, I'm not, Virginia has their.
I was going to say it's very sad to see where Syracuse is in this, Vinny.
Yeah, yeah, not the same program, but no question. SMU's a surprise team. They're probably going to be a slight home dog though in this game.
Right now, the number I see is SMU is a 1.5 point underdog in this game.
Yeah, I was going to say Ken Palm has Clemson
1.5, 2. Yeah.
Kind of like the home dog in that spot.
Well, they've really, you look at them, you look at Clemson, I mean, all their losses are to pretty legitimate teams.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, they're real. Clemson. I mean, this team was in the Elite Eight a year ago.
Yeah.
It obviously looks a little bit different. Hunter and Shefferlin, they're still there, but mostly a different team this go around. And like you said, other than the Georgia Tech loss, don't love that they lost to South Carolina, but that's a big rivalry game, and it was in Columbia. You lose to Memphis, who's a legitimate team. You lose in that weirdo spot early in the year at Boise, and they lose to Louisville on the road at the Nothing wrong with that.
So they have one loss in regulation.
Yep.
And 4 losses in overtime.
Yeah, it's a pretty good run.
Yeah, I mean that's a team that's they're going to show up.
Play close games can benefit teams, especially getting into tournament time.
Oh, I'm sorry. They lost to Louisville, too. That was not in overtime.
To the SEC again. Vinny, I want to ask you about Florida, who's number 2 in the polls right now. They take on LSU, who is the 15th best team from my power rating perspective in the league. Only South Carolina is behind them. But I'm just curious, how high do you have Florida now? Obviously, they won it all. They won at Auburn, which is the best win anyone has in college basketball this year. And they're all the way up to number 2 in the AP poll and on track to get a 1 seed according to all the bracketologists.
I have them fourth.
Who's 3 right now?
Houston.
Okay.
I have Houston 1 point. 2 points ahead of over Florida. So, no, Florida's good. So they have they've got them ahead of Duke.
The pollsters do, yes.
Well, I can tell you right now.
They were tied last week, and Florida vaulted them, even though Duke didn't lose last week.
Duke would be a favorite against Florida.
How much?
On a neutral. About
4?
2.5,
okay.
3.
Yeah. Again, I think Auburn and Duke have separated.
I
really do on those two. And then Alabama, Houston, Florida, that next group, and then everyone else is kind of in that group after
those
that.
teams you mentioned have shown their flaws.
Yeah.
More so, I mean, every team has flaws, but they've shown them more than Duke and Auburn have.
100%. And Florida, it's still kind of crazy. This Florida team that again, I thought was a good team going into the year. I thought they were, and clearly NCAA tournament good. I did not expect this, the legitimate potential national title team at this rate. Speaking of another SEC game now, we saw this matchup once already this year, and they broke the scoreboard. They scored so much.
They sure did.
Kentucky goes to Alabama this go-around, and Vinny, Chris, I'll just throw this out there with Bama. Bama got down 9-0 against Auburn. They lose by 9. Bama got down 12-0 to Missouri on Wednesday night. It was by 12. Mm-hmm. So they've been dead even after the first 2 minutes of each game. Look, I know that when a team that's looked at as this high-end loses 2 in a row, it feels like the sky is falling for those fan bases, people that may have futures tickets on them. I'm not overly concerned. The only concern that I have with Bama is that these 2 games have kind of showed what their 2 big flaws could be in an NCAA tournament spot. If they're not making their threes, which they didn't against Auburn, and if their defense implodes, which is what happened against Missouri. Kentucky, again, Vinny, Chris, as we talked about, just check the injury report with Kentucky at this point because they're still battling a whole collection of injuries here, Vincenz.
Yeah, and especially in the backcourt. And that's where they've lost some games really late because – ball handling and quarterbacking in critical moments has hurt them, and I'm not so sure how healthy they're going to get. I mean, they still have another month, but they've got to continue to battle and play themselves into. They're going to have a really good SEC tournament, I'm afraid, because they did lose to this Bama team by 5 at home in the middle of last month. So that's the issue with Kentucky. Maybe Pope's got to go back to what he did in the Gonzaga game, where switching defenses but they didn't have the injuries in that game. That's where the injuries actually started. I think it was in that Gonzaga game. But yeah, Alabama, it's great you can score, but you've got to play better defense. And if you plan on having a successful tournament, whether it's the SEC tournament, certainly, and then obviously in the big one.
Right now, Vinny, Chris, 8.5. That's what I see on this one with the total. That is 178.5, which I'm not sure is high enough.
That total will probably go. I made this game a little bit higher, though.
Ken Palm has it 5.
I'm sorry. I made it lower. I made it 6.5.
I just wonder for the early numbers on this, because Bama's lost 2 straight games, bettors maybe betting against the losing streak right now, potentially. I don't know how much I love that in this spot, but that's the only thing I can think of.
Just observational. A lot of times when a team's on a winning streak and they lose 1, they're going to lose 2. Does that mean they lose 3? Not really that often if they're a quality team. Does that mean they win and cover? I don't know. But I think that they a good chance of winning this game, But what'd you say the number was?
8.5.
8.5. I mean, it's only 5 on Ken Palm, so I don't know. That might be a little more recency bias for the last 2 games.
Smidge high on that one. I'm going to tell you right now, I'll be on the over in this game. Chris, I know.
What is the total?
178.5.
I'm looking. Jeez, it's like 183. Ken Palm.
Yeah, makes sense. It makes sense. Both of those last 2 games went over with a relative ease. Even that Auburn one that was a little sluggish early.
There's
on
value
that one.
with the points with Kentucky, even with their injuries. But check the injury report for sure.
Now here's an interesting one at Madison Square Garden.
Yes,
Duke in Illinois. In the middle of February.
Duke does that every year, don't they?
Every so often, but this is usually just they go play St. John's, which would have been a hell of a game this year if they did that.
Sure would have.
But Illinois and Duke at Madison Square Garden for whatever reason here.
You might see that matchup in the tournament.
What, Duke St. John's?
You might.
You might see it in Newark, New Jersey, Vinny, which would make it even better.
That'd be in the East region, and right now I think both of those teams conceivably could wind up in the East region, and as Jeff said, you might see them
I'd sign up for that.
Vinny, just curious here. We talked about it a little bit earlier with Illinois slumping all over the place. Earlier this week, they got smacked around by Wisconsin. Brent Underwood said after the game that his team was dealing with a big-time flu bug in that one. But even with that, Illinois has been super, super inconsistent over the last month plus now.
Double-digit dogs here.
I believe it.
I think I raised them. We don't have them on the board there, but I think I raised them a little bit this morning when I was going through.
Duke is 10.5 right now with the numbers available.
Yeah, I could see it.
152.5 on the total.
I could see it creeping up a little bit.
Wouldn't shock me, especially if favorites have a good day tomorrow.
But it looks like, one of those, remember when early in the season, back in the 90s, you had the ACC Big Ten Challenge. This is. I mean, it's a good matchup. It's interesting though how it's positioned here. So, but Duke does it. Yeah, because he's right. They this time of year, this is a carryover from Krzyzewski, playing a quality opponent outside of conference play as you're heading into the stretch run of your conference, then your conference tournament, and then of course. The NCAA tournament.
You get those kids ready for the big time, too.
Absolutely.
Going to New York, And I know every game's a big game, but New York just has a special aura about it.
Oh, really
a lot of Duke fans in the Garden.
There's no better venue for basketball in this country than Madison Square Garden still.
I've been there many times.
As good as some of these collegiate ones, Fog Allen, I've never been to Cameron Indoor.
I haven't either.
Rupp, as good as some of these are, there's still, like you said, there's a different aura when there's a game
just
in MSG.
Just the whole thing of New York. Just being in New York.
Hitting, by the way, St. John's, Connecticut on Sunday, Vinny.
Good game.
Where we get UConn fans and St. John's fans fully invested again at Madison Square Garden. The only thing that's a noon Eastern tip, by the way. So, bagels and basketball in New York for that one. Boy, by the way, I think St. John's is going to run them out of the building, personally, even with UConn losing to them the first go-around.
Johnny, well, again, UConn started that first game. It's in stores. They were up double digits, 14, I think, to start that game. And the Johnnies just fought their way back, rebounded their way back. It was a very dominant performance on the glass for St. John's in that game, and that was the difference.
It's almost like that Badino guy knows what he's doing.
Almost, yeah.
I would say. By the way, do we have that clip? Do we have time? Oh, we don't have time for the clip. That clip was great.
We'll get that clip next week.
Oh,
we'll make sure to have it.
It's worth it.
To say the least. All right, I want to hit 2 more out the door here. You mentioned it earlier with Arkansas. They take on my alma mater tomorrow. This is a matchup we saw once earlier this year in Mizzou. Just ran them out of Mizzou Arena by 18 in that first matchup. Arkansas desperate. Tigers coming off the big win against Alabama. Vinny, all that comes down to, Chris, it comes down to a 1.5 point line with Missouri as a small favorite on the road.
I'm looking at 2 with Ken Palm. It's got to be right there. And, relatively, Ken Palm has a total 150. What do you see it?
149.5.
Okay, well, that's
right on it.
Okay.
I would not be surprised if you see support with taking the points and betting the money line on Razorbacks.
I think this is a horrendous spot for Mizzou. Just off of
Yeah,
that win,
coming off of that big win.
on the road, going into that building, which is a very difficult spot to play, as long as they're not ticked off at their own team.
A desperate team is a dangerous team.
I will say though, Mizzou has met every challenge this year. This has been a shockingly fun ride for a team I did not expect much out of this year, and they're well on their way to being a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Is that a rivalry? Because I know the states are right next to each other.
So when Mizzou entered the league, they created for football what they called the battle line rivalry, which I always hated because I thought it was made up.
Yeah.
But for basketball, it was very much real. Because if you remember, Mike Anderson, who coached at Missouri, bolted for Arkansas.
Okay.
And people did not like Mike Anderson. And that first game against Arkansas was one of this for SEC games and I wasn't there obviously the other night for when I was in school for SEC games. That was the loudest I've ever heard that building for SEC games. The Big 12 games, different story. SEC games, loudest I've ever heard that building was that game.
Which more of a rivalry, Missouri-Arkansas or Missouri-Illinois?
It's close. Okay. People don't like Illinois either, and that game's always a fun one. That one off in St. Louis.
I was going to say it's always at a neutral site.
Always at the home of the Blues. Always. All right, one last one. BYU, Arizona. Boy, seems like a nice little fade spot of BYU off destroying Kansas. 7.5 is the number I see on this one with the Cats laying it at home.
Yeah, I made it 8. The Cats won. The Cats won at Provo. The beginning of this month, I think they played already. Yeah, so this is a second go round. You wonder, and Arizona, but they've been inconsistent too this year, right? They started off okay, then they tailed off. They're playing. I'd say they're playing better, but I don't. There'll be support. I think they're going to be more support for Arizona in this game. We're going to need BYU.
I would lay it. I would lay it sooner rather than later. I don't think that number is going to hang on for much longer. And then one I got to mention because it was requested in the chat. Mm-hmm. The big matchup in the WCC.
Gonzaga
and St. Mary's.
Oh, that's a big one.
Somehow both of these teams are not ranked. Look at you, pollsters. There's no numbers available on this game right now. No one has anything up. Vinny? What are we looking at right now on your numbers? And Chris, what is Ken Palm looking at?
Gonzaga 6 or 7, maybe. That's a little high. Maybe 6. I mean, the Zags were 3-point favorites at St. Mary's beginning of the month, right? And the Gales beat them. They beat them by 6 or 4, I think. 4. My numbers come to Gonzaga about 6 in this game.
Ken Palm has them 5. Gonzaga 5. But, Kaluch on your earlier show gave out St. Mary's as maybe a sleeper. I still got them pretty high. I got them like 125, I'd say, 125 to 1. I don't know if they can win it all, but, I've been through that school. I haven't stopped at that school, but I've been through it. It's a great area. And
Bay Area, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like behind like the Berkeley Hills, kind of behind Oakland and Berkeley. Tried to get my one daughter to go there, but she saved me some money. She went to Nevada, so I was okay. But it's a great school. It really is.
I will say just real quick on this one before we get out of here. This Gonzaga team it's very strange, and I think we had this discussion last Friday, where you usually by now know exactly what you're getting out of Gonzaga.
You don't know.
You have no clue what you're getting out of them on a nightly basis, which is very strange for few. Yeah. All you know is they're insanely talented. They're more talented than any other team in this league. But boy, NCAA tournament-wise, again, trying to make the Sweet 16 again over a decade straight now for few making the Sweet 16. It's going to be tough this year, especially.
What are you looking at, like an 8-9?
Right now, like Lunardi has them as the 8th seed, and they would play Auburn in round 2.
Wow.
Good luck. And also for Auburn, I would not be happy if that was my matchup in round 2. I was going to say,
if I was Auburn, I wouldn't be crazy about that matchup.
Yeah, even though I think Auburn would win that one. So, all right, that's all we got for you here today. Do we end up having the no question today? Nope. All right, good. We'll do that next week. We're going to have trivia for you guys next week.
Okay.
We're going to have that. Tomorrow we're back on the show 8:30 in the morning. I will be here. There are 147 basketball games tomorrow.
What time are you in tomorrow?
8:30.
8:30. Okay.
We'll get it going 8:30, 9:30. We'll go roll through as many as we can. tomorrow morning.
You and
Vince,
Alex?
Just me.
Just you.
Yeah,
Solo.
Wow.
Yeah, Alex is off on Friday.
God
and
is your
Saturdays.
co-pilot.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Well, yes, me and Sean and Drew Dog.
Okay.
Maybe we'll get Sean will bet Lamar probably tomorrow. Drew Dog, Ryan, Vince, Jerry, Sean, and all of you. Thank you, everyone in the chat who participated today. Adam, Ruben, Peter, all of you. Thank you very much for participating. Chris, Vinny, as well.
Good job,
Thank
guys.
you.
Good job behind the
Crew.
counter.
This is the regular time now for this show, 2:00 on Friday. So be on the lookout for that. And if you happen to come in late, just start over and just watch us all over again.
And catch Eddie O on this morning.
Exactly. Catch Eddie O on the show this morning as well. Available now on the YouTube page. We'll see you again next time. Sports by the Book live, as always, at the South Point.